When I pulled into the driveway of my mother's house in Flagstaff, the late October sun was already slipping behind the pines. The air had that brittle chill I remembered from high school when winter crept in quietly without warning. I sat in the car for a moment watching the porch light flicker on, half hoping she'd open the door before I even knocked. She didn't. The basement smelled exactly the way it used to, like damp carpet old books, and a hint of mothballs from a box that hadn't been touched since I left for college. Nothing had changed except that it all felt smaller. The futon was still there, sagging in the middle, and so was the dented metal bookshelf I once used to store comic books and college textbooks side by side. Mom stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed her silhouette framed by the kitchen light behind her. She didn't step down, just watched me as I dropped my duffel bag on the concrete floor. "This is temporary, right?" she said. Her voice wasn't cold. It was clinical, like she was stating a fact, not asking a question. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure. The startup had drained my savings, my partner had moved on, and Portland, once the place I thought I'd build a life, had started to feel like a graveyard for the version of me I'd tried to become. Flagstaff was never the plan, but I'd run out of cities, and this house, uncomfortable as it was the only one with a key I still remembered how to use. She left before I could say anything more. I unpacked in silence. My old hoodie still hung on a hook behind the door, faded and 2 sizes too small. A shoebox under the bed held ticket stubs, birthday cards, and one blurry photo of me and Grandma Imelda at the state fair when I was 10. She was holding a corn dog. I was holding her hand. I lay back on the futon and stared up at the unfinished ceiling wires, trailing like veins across exposed beams. I had come back to the place that built me, hoping maybe it could help rebuild me too. The next morning, someone knocked on the front door. I was halfway through a bowl of cereal at the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang. Thera didn't move from her seat by the window. She was already dressed, hair brushed into its usual twist sweater, immaculate nails, done in the same pale pink she always wore when company was expected. But there'd been no talk of visitors. "I'll get it," I said, standing and brushing crumbs off my hoodie. When I opened the door, there she was. Grandma Imelda. She wore a navy coat that hung off her shoulders like it used to belong to someone heavier. Her silver hair was tucked under a wide-brimmed hat, and her eyes, though tired, had a sharpness I remembered from childhood. 2 suitcases stood neatly at her feet. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, one brow raised, as if daring me to comment on the absurdity of it all. "Hi," I said, blinking. "What are you doing here? I'm moving in," she replied with that dry smile she always used when she meant something half serious, half sad. "Is your mother home?" Before I could respond, Thera stepped into the foyer behind me. "Mom," she said, voice rising an octave. "You didn't call." "I figured calling would give you time to prepare reasons to say no," Grandma said evenly. "I've sold the house in Santa Fe. The money's already in your account." Thera's face didn't change, not exactly. She smiled wide and gracious, stepping forward to wrap Imelda in a hug. "Of course you're welcome," she said. "You should have told me. We'd have prepared a proper room." "I don't need proper," Imelda said, pulling back. "I need present." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. I helped with the bags, trying not to watch Thera's expression shift from welcome to calculation. Later that evening, I passed by the study and overheard them talking. Thera's voice was low but crisp. "You didn't need to transfer the full amount right away." "I didn't want this to be a negotiation," Imelda answered. "I want to age in a place where family still lives. I want to do it right this time." I stood outside the door for a moment, listening to nothing but the clink of a glass being set down. Then I went back downstairs, unsure of what had just entered our home. The next day the house smelled like fresh flowers and lemon polish. By the end of the first week, our house looked like it belonged in a magazine spread titled Modern Family Harmony. Thera was in full production mode, fresh-cut tulips on the dining table, cloth napkins ironed flat and folded into triangles matching dishware candles that smelled like bergamot and good intentions. Dinner was served promptly at 6, with menus that included roasted salmon quinoa pilaf and desserts she used to say were too fussy to bother with. Grandma Imelda had been given the guest room, our best one, complete with embroidered pillowcases and a handwritten note on the nightstand that read, "Welcome home." I'd never seen Thera put that much care into anyone's room, not even her own. She took photos constantly. One morning I came upstairs to find her angling her phone just right, catching the morning light on Grandma's coffee cup and a plate of lemon scones. A few hours later, I saw it posted, "Feeling grateful to have Mom with us, cherishing every moment. 3 generations. Family is everything." Imelda didn't have social media. She didn't even have email until I set it up for her the following afternoon. We sat together on the back porch with my old tablet, the one with a cracked corner and smudged screen, and I walked her through it. "This button opens your inbox. This one's for photos," I said, showing her how to swipe. Her fingers moved slow, cautious, but her attention never wavered. "I never really cared about these things," she said, squinting. "But now I want to see what the world looks like when no one knows you're watching." There was something disarming about her honesty. I found myself enjoying our sessions more than I expected. We talked about small things, how she used to handwrite letters, how much sugar belonged in tea, whether I still played the guitar. I hadn't touched it in years. Thera passed by once while we were sitting out there, her arms full of groceries. "You and your grandma," she said with a bright smile. "Didn't know you two had anything in common." I looked at Imelda, who gave me a wink when Thera wasn't looking. "I guess we do," I said. "Just took time to find it." Thera laughed and disappeared into the house, already halfway into her next task. That night at dinner, she brought out a wine I'd never seen her open and toasted to family and the gift of second chances. Imelda lifted her glass, but her eyes never left me. A few days later, the flowers stopped arriving. It started small, a missed breakfast, a dinner reheated in the microwave instead of served on the table. The flowers vanished from the vases. The house, once scrubbed to showroom shine, started showing signs of wear again, dust settling on the windowsills, streaks on the mirror in the hallway, crumbs left on the counter. Thera said she'd gotten busier. "I've been volunteering at the library again," she explained when I asked if she was home for lunch. "And your grandma, well, she's independent. She doesn't need pampering." But independence wasn't the same thing as invisibility. I came home early one Thursday and heard Thera in the kitchen, her voice low but sharp through the half-closed door. "I can't be a nurse," she snapped. "No, it's not like that. It's just, the money won't stretch forever if I keep this up." I waited until she hung up before walking in. She looked startled, then smiled like she'd been rehearsing. "Oh, hi. Just ordering groceries." Imelda started doing her own laundry the following week. I caught her dragging a basket down the hall, her knees stiff and slow. I offered to take it, but she waved me off. "I was folding my own sheets before your mother had teeth," she said. "Let me keep that dignity a little longer." We folded the warm clothes together on the couch. She didn't say much at first, just kept smoothing every edge, every crease, like the fabric itself deserved kindness. After a while, she said, "Some people see age as decline, others see it as debt owed. Your mother's still figuring out which." She didn't say it with resentment. If anything, it sounded like resignation, like she'd made peace with a truth too old to change. I thought about the way Thera's tone had shifted when she talked about money, how her texts to me had grown clipped, how she'd skipped the last 3 dinners without notice. Imelda noticed too. She didn't complain, but she stopped setting the table with the good plates. That night I brought home takeout. We ate lo mein out of cartons and watched the weather report on mute. "Storm's coming," Imelda murmured, peering at the screen. "Yeah," I said. "I think it's already here." The next morning I came upstairs to find her suitcase by the door. I woke to the kind of stillness that doesn't belong in a house where someone else is supposed to be moving. The coffee wasn't brewing, the hallway, light was off, and the usual sound of the kettle's slow whistle was missing. I went upstairs expecting to see Grandma in her robe, maybe sitting with her crossword puzzle and the same black coffee she always insisted didn't need sugar. But the kitchen was empty. So was the guest room. Her bed was made neatly with the pillow tucked beneath the comforter. The closet door was ajar, and inside nothing hung on the rod except an empty wooden hanger, swinging slightly as if someone had left in a hurry. I knew before I found the note that she was gone, but seeing her handwriting made it final. She'd tucked the message into an old comic book I used to keep on my nightstand, Silver Arrow number 14, the one where the hero loses everything but chooses to fight anyway. The paper inside was small, folded once the ink a little shaky. I thought I could buy dignity. Turns out you can only buy silence. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding it, waiting for the weight of those words to settle. Then I stood up and went upstairs. Thera was in the dining room, scrolling through her phone, one leg crossed over the other, a half-eaten slice of toast on her plate. "She's gone," I said. She didn't look up. "She wasn't happy here. You didn't tell me." Thera exhaled sharply, finally setting the phone down. "I offered to pay for her to stay somewhere quiet. A rental, small, peaceful. She chose to leave. She chose that I said slowly, because you made this house feel like a negotiation. I gave her what she wanted," she snapped. "She said she didn't want to be a burden, and you let her believe she was one." Her silence was louder than the argument we didn't have. I spent the afternoon calling every motel in a 5-mile radius. I finally found her under I. Royce, at a faded budget place tucked between a liquor store and a payday loan office near downtown, room 206. She opened the door in a sweatshirt too thin for November and gave me the smallest smile I'd ever seen on her face. "You didn't have to come," she said. "Yes, I did." I helped her pack. There wasn't much: a small suitcase, a paperback novel, the crossword book, and the same cracked mug she used at the house. We drove back to my place in silence. My sublet was barely large enough for one, but I cleared the desk chair and offered her the bed. She shook her head. "We'll take turns." We didn't. I slept on the floor that night, and for the first time in a long while the house felt like family. The next morning I made her coffee the way she liked it. We didn't have much, but we made it work. My sublet had one window that barely opened a floor that creaked no matter where you stepped, and a heater that clicked like it had stage fright. But there was space for 2 chairs if we moved the laundry basket out of the way, and enough room on the tiny stovetop for a kettle and a pot of noodles. Imelda took the bed, no argument. I laid a spare blanket over an old yoga mat and claimed the space between the dresser and the door. It wasn't comfortable, but it didn't need to be. She'd spent months pretending not to notice how unwelcome she'd become. The least I could do was make sure she didn't have to pretend anymore. Our days found their rhythm. I worked freelance gigs online, mostly quiet, click-heavy hours, while Imelda sat by the window doing crosswords or reading paperbacks from the thrift store down the block. Every afternoon around 4, we split cheap Chinese takeout from the place that offered 2 entrees for $5. Lo mein again, I'd say. "Consistency is underrated," she'd reply. Sometimes she talked about things I'd never heard before, like how she'd raised Thera mostly alone, how her own mother had been distant, how she thought she'd done the best she could, but probably hadn't done enough. She always wanted everything neat, Imelda said one night, stirring her tea with the tip of her finger. Not just the house, the story. She didn't like messes, and I was a walking one by the time she hit her teens. She said you abandoned her, I said carefully. Imelda nodded. Maybe I did. I went quiet when I should have explained. I let her carry the wrong version of things for too long, and by the time I tried to fix it, she didn't want to hear me anymore. The air in the room seemed to hold that sentence for a beat too long. After that night, she started coughing more. At first it was light, almost like a throat clear. Then it came in long spells that left her breathless and pale. I offered to take her to urgent care. She waved it off. It's just the dry air, she said. Flagstaff's never agreed with me. I bought a humidifier with my grocery budget and set it by the bed. She smiled like it was a bouquet. Some nights she fell asleep mid-sentence talking about her sister in Santa Fe, or about the way apricots used to taste before they started packaging everything for shelf life. I stayed up a little longer on those nights watching her chest rise and fall, afraid that if I looked away too long it might stop. And then one morning, it almost did. She died the way I think she always hoped she would, quietly, without ceremony, on a day that looked like all the others. I found her still and peaceful, one hand curled under her chin, like she'd simply drifted off mid-thought. Her last words to me the night before had come between sips of tea and slow, tired breaths. Don't become numb like I did. Be inconvenient if you must, but never absent. I didn't cry when she passed. Not right away. There was too much to do, too many calls to make, too many forms to fill. The world doesn't stop for grief. It hands you clipboards and bills and a funeral pamphlet template. I buried her in a quiet cemetery on the north edge of town. No speeches, no flowers, just the two of us and a minister who didn't know her but spoke kindly anyway. The will reading happened the following week in an office that smelled like pine furniture polish and artificial lemon. Mr. Linton, her lawyer, greeted me with a nod and a manila envelope thick enough to carry secrets. Thera arrived a few minutes late, dressed in black, like someone playing the part of a grieving daughter. She smiled at me briefly, then turned her full attention to Mr. Linton. "I assume this won't take long," she said, smoothing the crease in her skirt. He adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Imelda Royce's final estate includes the previously known $1.5 million as well as an additional $4.4 million in assets, ranch royalties in Utah, silent shares in 2 energy firms, and several long-held municipal bonds. The total valuation at time of death is $5.9 million. Thera blinked lips, parting. She never mentioned she preferred discretion, Mr. Linton said flatly, then looked at me. The entire estate in full is left to Calder Royce. For a moment I didn't move. I felt Thera's stare settle on me like frost. There is also a letter she requested be read aloud, he added. He opened a folded page and read, steady and slow. Thera, I gave you money. Calder gave me peace. You taught me silence. He gave me presence. That was it. No embellishment, no apology. Just a final line drawn between what she gave and what she received. Thera stood without a word, gathered her purse, and left the room. I didn't follow. Mr. Linton slid a new envelope toward me. There's more to handle, of course, he said. But this is where it begins. I nodded, hand resting on the envelope's edge. The weight of it didn't feel like money. It felt like a promise. The next morning I started looking for buildings to rent. Thera didn't go quietly. A week after the reading, she returned to Mr. Linton's office with a new haircut, a sharper tone, and a vague threat about contesting the will. He didn't flinch. There's a video, he said simply. Imelda anticipated this. He clicked play. The screen came to life with the grainy image of my grandmother sitting on a bench in her old garden. She wore a cardigan I recognized, and her voice was low, steady, not warm, but not cruel either. To anyone watching this, I want to make something clear, she said. I didn't leave anything to Calder out of sentiment. I left it to him because he showed up. Not for money, not out of duty. Just because I needed someone and he didn't look away. She paused, folding her hands in her lap. I don't expect anyone to like my decision, but I spent too many years protecting appearances. This is the one thing I get to do honestly. The screen went black. Mr. Linton opened a small box and slid it toward Thera. Inside was a silk scarf, cream, with blue stitching and a tarnished compact mirror. A note in Imelda's handwriting lay beneath it, in case you ever want to see yourself honestly. Thera didn't say anything. She closed the box and left without touching the scarf. The following month I signed the lease on a single-story building with wide hallways and sunlight in every room. We named it Royce Haven, a home for older women with nowhere else to go. There were no grand speeches, no press releases, just clean beds, warm meals, and a front door that didn't need to be earned. Some nights I'd stay late walking the quiet halls, making tea for whoever couldn't sleep. They'd talk, I'd listen. It wasn't complicated. One morning I sat by the window of my office with a mug of black coffee cooling beside me. Imelda's reading glasses rested near the edge of the desk, right where she used to leave them after solving the crossword. The sun hit them just right, casting two oval shadows on the wood. They looked like eyes, still watching, just softer now, and at peace. I sipped my coffee and opened a new file. The next building would need more rooms. There were still too many doors, missing keys.